good morning. This is Tampa Home Talk, and we're lined up for another 2-hour show this morning. And first things first, Leo, let's go ahead and kick it off with the stats, shall we?
Yes, the stats are Leo has not had a haircut in 8.5 months. He was scheduled to have a haircut, and yeah.
I had to make a comment because I come in and I'm like, Leo's got this major curly hair everywhere, and I'm like, you look a little bit like a stray.
I need an underground haircut. I found out that it's a $10,000 fine and revoking of license if they catch you doing haircuts. It's amazing.
I can't believe that. What was that, Pat?
Turn Leo's mic down.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Turn me down?
Yeah.
Or turn Katrina up.
Okay.
Let's
we can
turn
do
Kat
both
up.
of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
How's your voice this week, Kat?
Well, I stopped doing allergy shots.
Oh.
Does it sound any better or different? Mimi, am I coughing more or less? Do you know? Huh?
You're coughing less.
Sound a little more raspy.
It does?
Yeah.
It's Friday.
Are you a chain smoker?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
It sounds like it, but yeah, I don't. Anyway, so let's go over the market stats for this week. So in the last 7 days, we've had 1,138 new listings hit the market in our 3-county area. So that is all of Hillsborough County, all of Pasco, and all of Pinellas. Ooh. And the number of price decreases, almost as many, 1,045. And the number of solds, 961. Wow. So that's for the first time down. Like, I think that's down for the first time in...
What number of solds?
Weeks, yeah. Because the sold listings every week has been higher than the actives every week. I'm going back and looking through the stats. Yep, this is the very first week that the sold numbers have been less than the new listings.
So that's good or bad?
Well, I mean...
It's a rebound.
Less have sold. So
That's a rebound.
Here's
New
the
listings is 200 up from the last week. So we got a little bit of a rebound going on.
It's up. We got less listings on the market. And I know I personally have probably, I don't know without counting, maybe 4 listings that are signed but not live. Like no sign in the yard, no not even on the market yet. They're not live.
We should celebrate this by going to some restaurant, sitting in their parking lot, baking in the sun and eating.
Let's not. We can just say we did.
You sure?
So hold on. We got to look at pendings too. Look at this. Off the chain. Like this just keeps getting higher and higher every week. So it'll be interesting to see what this looks like in the coming weeks and months ahead.
I've never seen a pending that high before.
Well, this week, 1,591. Last week, 1,435. The week before that, 1,241.
Makes my statement. You're validating my statement.
Week before that, 993, 1118, 1080. I mean, that's crazy.
So these are just lenders that can't get theirs together.
Off the cuff, what is that? 25, 30% higher?
Yeah.
I mean, not last week, but...
I mean, we're 30% higher than we should be.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
So that's exciting news for us because it's been steady. Like you would think that some of the clients I talked to as I've been checking in with them, they're like, so how's it going? They think I'm like home watching Ozark and all this stuff. And I'm like, no.
I had to binge that whole thing.
Actually,
once you start watching, it sucks you in.
So I started watching it. Nobody else will watch it in my house but me. And I don't even watch TV. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess
it sucks you right in. It's like Tiger King all over again.
So anyway, yeah, that's the latest there. But we've been nonstop. And you know what we are seeing a ton of? Relocation buyers coming into Florida.
Of course, because they said that with the humidity, the virus can't move as far. Usually it moves 6 feet in New York, but it only moves 2.5 feet due to the humidity. Who would have thought heavy humidity down here in Florida helps for more than just mosquitoes?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the common denominator in all the people that I have talked to, and it's been a lot of like IT and different people. What they're seeing is they've been waiting for the formal go-ahead from their company that they get to work remotely permanently.
Oh.
So this, I think, is going to have a huge impact on our market here in Tampa. I don't think we're going to see the major shifts that some of these other, areas will.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you can work remotely permanently, then you can live anywhere.
Yeah.
You could live in the Publix like a Channel side.
And I mean, here's the thing. Like one of my best friend's daughter, she's been in New York for years. She works for the Oprah magazine, makes pretty good money. And when you look at a New York salary compared to what we can buy here, think about what that's going to do to our housing prices. Because I can tell you her budget is double what our median income is.
So let me ask you this from
and she's moving back.
I guess we have the wrong attorney to ask this question. But
I've done it all. You can ask me.
Okay, so my company is based in New York. My office is based in New York, but I work remotely. Do I have to pay New York State income tax?
if you're getting paid from a New York company down and your job is actually a New York company, you're probably going to have to pay New York state taxes.
Okay, so you can't use the Florida thing to get out of state tax. Now, let me ask you another
Who
trick
cares
question.
when your income is double what you could make here and your housing expenses are half? Does it really
Let me
matter?
ask you another trick question.
Yeah,
Let's
because if
say
you're
that,
getting New York income and paying New York taxes and living in Florida, you still got a lot more money.
now let me one up that. Let's say you're in Louisiana, where you have state income tax with a New York company based out of a New York office. Now, do you have to pay both Louisiana and New York state income tax?
By the way, for the person listening, let me reintroduce Glen Lanksy. He's our attorney for the hour, and typically you do a lot of the divorce stuff, but your
I'm asking
background.
tax. Asking tax.
Okay, I'm going back to it. I'm just saying.
I do mostly divorce, a family law, criminal, and personal injury, but I've done real estate and done everything. I haven't done tax, but for instance, in the question that you asked, I'm also an NFL agent. So NFL players have to pay, if they are based in Pittsburgh, for their 8 home games in Pittsburgh, they pay whatever Pennsylvania is. If they go play a game in New York that week, that percentage of their income is subject to New York state, local, municipal taxes.
So
that
you're,
kind of.
do they
you're an
have to pay-
NFL
do they
agent
have to-
where?
I do. I have my own agency, Elite Sports Agency here in Florida. We represent just NFL football players.
I love football.
See, I remembered
Coming
that
out
from
of
last
college.
year. That's why I'm asking the tax
Yeah.
questions.
You love what?
No, I remembered that from last year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm asking these tax questions, because we talked about the fact that the players have to get taxed by the individual cities.
Correct.
So do they get taxed by New York and by Pittsburgh, or is it
Well,
just
they would
the
get taxed by the practice days in Pittsburgh
Yeah.
and the game days, and however many days they're in New York earning money. Because some of these guys are earning, 100,000 a day.
That's
Yeah, but
bizarre.
they might be earning $100,000 a day, but they pay $70,000 of it in taxes.
They do pay a lot of taxes.
So
My
they're only
players.
making
So where you
$30,000 a
sign
day.
matters is what you're saying.
For instance, Tom Brady going
I
from
was
New
just
England to
thinking that.
Tampa.
Okay.
to getting
He
kicked
d-
out of parks.
He doesn't need as much money if you're playing in Tampa, Jacksonville, or Miami because the taxes are so much less than playing in New York. So making $3 million a year in New York is not the same as making $3 million in Florida. I mean, it's
He
a
might as
big
well have
difference.
doubled his salary, really.
But
It's
he-
$6 million in New York.
It's a lot.
And he's not the quarterback he used to be, so we're all getting a discount.
And just
Leo, you are not going to start talking sports this morning, please.
Welcome
are
to
you?
Sports Radio.
Yeah, no. Leo knows the least about sports. That's a running joke, but he can probably answer anything else you ask.
okay.
No, I know Tom Brady is with the Buccaneers.
Yes.
Yeah,
he
that.
is.
Okay, so I've asked the divorce attorney the tough questions about taxes, but that's interesting, Katrina. We're seeing a large influx of baby.
Pending.
So instead of being baby boomers, they're just babies. Babies moving to Florida.
We're seeing a lot of regular tech, which that's no surprise.
Well,
like we've
Ybor
seen.
City is a tech hub. They're actually for the east coast of the United States. Ybor City is one of the largest tech hubs there are.
Yeah. The one that I think is going to get the biggest impact in real estate is commercial real estate. I think it's going to be a very, very long time before commercial real estate recovers from this. And I don't know what the new normal will look like going forward.
You have to look what the industrial engineers did after modeling after the Japanese models of very tight cubicle spaces, maybe sleeping tubes, things of that nature. That's gone in America. So we can't cram people in like we used to. So now we have to go back to offices. We have to go back to roomier space, and these companies just will work from home. I mean, we were talking off the air how restaurants for Cinco de Mayo who were Hispanic in flavor were charging a table service just to get a table, and they were getting the money. But I mean,
What was the table service like? How much was it?
I heard it was $500.
There was places I heard, without mentioning any names, in Tampa that were charging a $500 per table. Didn't include any purchases, just to have a table.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to eat out that bad. I really don't.
I don't either, but I could see it. I mean, we were saying last week, we were questioning how restaurants were going to possibly make money if they're at 25% capacity, and charging for the privilege to sit down is one of the ways they can do that.
Well, think about it. I mean, they have to likely renegotiate their lease. I mean, they would need to stay in business. And the commercial owners of the building would be foolish not to renegotiate the lease.
I agree with you. And I was reading some articles about like AMC theaters can't pay their rent. Cheesecake factories couldn't pay their rent.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? Kick them out? Who's going to come in?
Exactly.
I mean, who's
Exactly.
going to rent a movie theater? I mean, how are you going to do it?
You're not.
You'd have to level the land and just level the place. But
Well,
they just have to renegotiate, like
so
you
I've
said.
got a thought on that. We're going to talk about that when we come back right after the break. You probably already heard the music rolling. And if you got a question or you want a text or you want something for us to cover, call or text our off-air number, 813-377-2775. Just call or text. That's our off-air number. We'll answer any questions or comments you have on the air. 813-377-2775. Stick around. We'll be back in just a moment.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Leo Kane. We talking about the death of sweet tomatoes just now.
Yeah, that's it.
The buffet restaurant, I mean, will it ever come back? Will the Chinese buffets ever come back?
It's funny somebody asked me about that yesterday. I don't think so.
Chinese buffets are a huge staple when I'm traveling because I can get a bunch of food, variety, and it's fast.
I'll tell you what I like though, like before any of this started, I've always been like the germaphobe that washes their hands too long. I like the paper towels, not the hand dry things. And then when I leave, I can't stand it when there's not a trash can right by the door so that I can open the door and throw it in there. And so I was in Carrabba's last night. One of the wait staff was in there and I said, hey, why isn't there a trash can by the door? Like nobody would think about that before, but now it's actually going to be there. But I'd never like touched knobs. It's always been like a pet
Have you seen
peeve.
that new tool they have that looks almost like a key, but it's got like a little claw on the end so that you can catch
Turn
the
that person
doorknob.
up.
No, I haven't seen that. But so how does it? Well, that's only if it's a lever, right?
Well,
What if it's a turn knob?
Yeah.
I'm thinking what's going to come in is foot pedals. That your people are going to be open and shut doors with their foot.
Or motion.
Or motion, yeah. Just wave your hand in front
They
of
have the
them.
handicap doors. You just kind of hit the button right now with your elbow, and the door slowly opens.
I'm the one that would always use those, and people I get stared at. Like
I would always tell people, I'll get the door for you, and then I hit the button, and it just slowly, creepily opens.
I'll
and
wait
it's
for
awkward.
it. I'll wait for it. So I don't have to touch a knob, but I just. So now with this COVID-19 thing, I'm not necessarily the weirdo because like everybody's doing it. So. What the heck were we talking about in the first
Sweet tomatoes. Sweet
No,
tomatoes.
that wasn't it.
Oh. The fact that real estate market's rebounding for Florida.
Oh, yeah, Florida. But, Glenn, we were talking about something
The
specific.
NFL. Leo was spouting out sports statistics.
That was the tax
After
stuff
that,
of the
tax
NFL.
There was something else.
The commercial.
Commercial
Commercial real estate
properties.
collapse.
Yes, we were talking about the executive suites kind
The
of.
death
Yes.
of commercial real estate.
So do you think WeWork and like those kind of spaces will do better or worse?
Are those like the SBA?
You know, they're
shared
like the
spaces?
big open workspaces.
I don't think you're going to see much of that anymore because people are still going to be just a little more conscious for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I don't think you'll see the market. I mean, you're 2 to 3 years probably before people are
Got to turn that
ready
guy
to
up.
do work in a big open call center like that,
What
where
about,
they're
like,
right on top of each other.
Are movie theaters ever going to rebound? All the
That's
movie
what we were
releases
talking
have
about.
been, like,
That's
pushed.
exactly where we left off the
Yeah.
movie theaters.
Yeah, you can't kick AMC out. I mean, Spirit can only operate their store for like 6 weeks out of the year. So, I mean, but yeah, like an AMC, I mean, that's what often happens when like a Walmart or a Target, when they close a plaza down, it kills the entire strip mall they're in, and
The
nothing
anchor
can
store.
take their place.
because it's an anchor store
Yeah.
and that doesn't
Yeah.
bring in the traffic. There was one by us where an Albertsons closed and all those other businesses suffered because it didn't bring in the traffic. So yeah, you got big problems with that. Movie theaters might see 2 seats, 6 feet, 2 seats, 6 feet. They might have to just pull out seats for a long time. I don't know, or just lock them down.
Well, that's kind of weird because if I show up with my family, we should all be able to sit together.
Exactly. Well, they might have family sections like in the corners, like at the Buck Stadium or something, where you can't cuss or something.
We should look at the stock prices for like AMC because, we even had like that movie thing, the movie pass thing, and then canceled that like right away.
Fandango or something. One
No,
of those.
it was called
No, it
Movie
was,
Pass.
Yeah, it was the unlimited movie thing. And then we weren't going anyway. I started considering it, and then this, and I'm like, they're going to close movie theaters. So we
It's
canceled that like 2
movie
months
theaters
ago.
have been struggling for a while. I mean, when MoviePass came along with their really bad business model, it kind of revived. They were 15% of all movie traffic for
See,
a while.
we did the movie pass for a while, and it was great. And it was affordable. It made sense. That was like our Friday night ritual for a while.
Well, it was great until the marketing team bought it and exploded it because it never really had a way to make money. It wasn't. They were buying tickets at full price, and they were going to try and use the fact they had a volume discount
Right.
of buyers to get a discount. But AMC, Regal, and all those companies didn't go to it. Instead, they came out with their own version of it, and they just pushed MoviePass into bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, what happened too was they ended up only selling a certain number, and then you could never get a ticket. And then I'm like,
Well, that was after the explosion. I mean, when it was small it was doable.
good. Yeah.
But when it exploded, this was January of last year, I think. When it exploded and became really popular, they were incurring like $1 billion of debt a month.
Oh, wow.
MoviePass is a great example of how marketing can destroy your business.
Well, you got to have a good plan. I mean, right? That's what any business is like. You got to draw out the business model and then measure everything. And if you don't, you're set to fail.
Yeah. Speaking of set to fail, shall we talk about divorce?
Well, we had
That's what I'm here for.
We had Glen Lanksy. We invited him back in this week because all the stuff that we're seeing in the media is we want to get your take on it as an attorney that does this stuff. But we're saying what we're seeing is domestic abuses are rising, divorces are going to go through the roof. Just all this stuff with people being quarantined at home. What's your take on it, Glenn? Are you seeing that yet, or
I've run out of plates? I've smashed so many.
Well, I've been practicing for for 27 years, and I've probably done divorces in some capacity for the last 24. Right now, we're not really seeing too much of a dip in our practice. I mean, we're out in the Fishhawk, Lithia area, and also have a Tampa office, but business as usual. And I think people are realizing those that were going to wait, for their kids to graduate or something like that, they're just moving forward. And I think that once
the quarantine was the straw that broke the camel's back.
There are great relationships, there are average relationships, and there's bad relationships, and the average ones are probably becoming bad, and the bad ones are becoming unbearable. So I think the more you're together, there's a lot. When I look at divorces, and probably over the years, the main reasons people come in, one would be infidelity. But the biggest one you see is fighting over money.
Yeah, I was going to say money.
And there's less and less money. But what people don't realize is, and not so much for the situation, but, you're struggling to support one household on money. And
what do you think it's
now
going to be
you're going
like?
to two households on the same amount of money, and there's just not – there's women and men that need support, alimony, and in order to survive, and child support. And if the gentleman or the woman on the other side is not working, even though you need it, he's got to or she has to have the ability to pay it.
When you see that it gets that far, is there ever any bringing that back?
I've seen some. My experience with cheating and infidelity situations are, and I talk to people. I when they come in, whether they're men or women, I said, look, you're here. I can hear some hesitation in your voice, whether you want this or not. It's not about me making a fee. I really want them to do what's best for them. So I do two things. I point to my heart and say, do you know here it's over? And then I point to my head and say, do you know here it's over? And if those people can answer both in the affirmative, then it's time for the divorce. But if one of them's lingering, then I say, you need to take some time. You need to talk it out. But with the infidelity,
what happens when you've got one that's like yes and yes, and the other one's like no?
Well, in Florida, it's divorce only takes one person. It's not like other states where they make you do like an 18-month cooling off period to see if you can work it out. You got to stay married. Some states where you see a lot of people like keeping the marital house and moving in 1 week and the other person getting an apartment and moving out.
Do you really see that?
Up north.
Oh.
I've seen a lot of people. I've had a lot of friends and relatives in the Maryland, that kind of area where they had to stay separated for 18 months and they shared 2 residences. So that's how they did it to be able to do it. Those people had a lot of money most of the time. But
so I got to harass you for a minute because you're newly married.
I am newly married.
Your wedding was kind of crashed with the COVID-19 stuff.
That is correct.
So did your new wife have any reservation about marrying a divorce attorney?
Since I helped with her divorce behind the scenes.
A new spin.
She knows how good I am, and I know she's listening right now. So, Janine, I love you. But
I know. Remember Leo and Adam the last time we had you on? They were like, oh my gosh, why do we have a divorce attorney in here? And they're both like, my wife's going to be listening. I'm like, it's okay, guys.
Well, even with my first divorce, honestly, I didn't want to fight. I said, what do you want? What do you think is fair? She said it. I said, good, done. We were great with the kids, and we have a great relationship. For our kids, my youngest just graduated high school. I got one graduating Gainesville. He just graduated on Friday. I got one that graduated nursing school last year. Graduations we go to together. We have mixed dinners together with the in-laws. It's great. And I encourage people when they come to me, I said the best thing you can do, even after a contested case, we walk out, and I walk out with the other attorney. I said, look, I'd just like to talk to, tell these people, you have kids together.
Figure it out.
And you might hate each other, but you need to put on a united front, and you need to get along for the sake of your kids. And, in those situations, it's if they take it to heart and they actually try to do it, you see it successful. But the reason I'm in business is because 80% of those people don't do that, and I get motions for contempt, and I get motions to modify. I mean, we deal with that all the time.
And this is, I literally just said this to an agent yesterday. So this was one where the granddad, I guess, owned it. He passed away. He left the property to his son and his grandson.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, the son or the dad is living in the property, supposed to be paying his share of rent, not doing it in the restaurant business. And so, the grandson now retained an attorney to sell it because, in this situation, usually it's best. And so the courts can force a sale. Yes. A lot of times I'm the appointed one that they hired to sell the property. And so I told my agent, we were standing out in front of it because I was thinking this was court order, but it wasn't actually. They just both agreed.
Okay.
And so I said, we'll talk. And then so we went in and she said, so what's the deal? And I said, and the difference is we need a listing agreement signed if it's not court ordered. If it's court ordered, we don't need it signed. And so I told her, I said, this is basically like a divorce. If both parties can agree and just get on the same page, it's better for everybody. They're going to pay less on attorney's fees, and it's going to be much easier, and they're going to net more money in their pocket.
Correct.
If they want to fight about it, they can,
but
they're going to net less money. So hold your thought, Glenn.
Yes.
We got to roll a break. We'll be back in just a moment. And good morning. We are back. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, joined by Leo Kane, Barrel Engineering and Inspections. Woohoo! And Glen Lanksy. He's our divorce attorney for the hour. And then Kim's hanging out with us as well. Kimberly Smith.
Yes. She got it.
With the flipped room. And we're going to be talking to her a lot in the next hour. So, Glenn, let's dive into a little bit about the divorce stuff because we know... I think it's going to spike. Don't you think you're going to get busy?
Fortunately for my business, yes, I think we're going to get very busy. I think it's going to be once things open up and people are not as afraid to come out and do things, I think we're going to see a big spike in the divorce filings. We follow the filings each day in the general Tampa area, Hillsborough County, and we are seeing probably between 10 and 15 divorces a day being filed in the
What was it
Tampa
3
courts.
months ago?
There were days where it was probably it was about the same, probably.
So nothing major yet.
Maybe a little bit less. I think
people are scared right now.
Well, money, like we talked about, is the biggest thing. So if people don't think, once their husbands or wives can go back to work and earn what they were earning if they lost their jobs or something, that's when I think it's going to come. I think people are waiting to see what happens. But I think toward the end of this year, early next year, you're going to see a real big spike is my feeling. And I do consults all over the phone right now. We retain people over the phone. If they want to Zoom, we do Zoom. But I have a lot of calls that say, okay, I'm going to use you, but I need about 2 months to get everything in order and try to get some money together. So that's what you hear a lot. So that's what's giving me the inkling. Definitely it's going to rise. And I think all the articles and all the papers are going to see a big spike in the divorce rate. Like you said, the domestic violences are up. Filing for injunctions for protection, those you see are moving up as well. And I do think there's going to be a big
Which can be
spike.
hard to get, by the way. Like, one of my friends was filing, injunctions against her ex-husband, and it was hard to get it. And then it was hard to renew the protection order. It was pretty crazy.
You have to, if it's not granted permanently, to renew it, you have to show.
Apparently, he didn't do enough to grant it permanently, but it's
So the way injunctions work is they're done ex parte. So
which means
you do it. You file an injunction. It goes to a judge, and the other side doesn't get to give their side of the story. And based on what you put in there and what they think is provable and not provable, and what's not just hearsay that you wouldn't be able to get into evidence and stuff, a judge each day will look at those injunctions. At the end of the day, they'll either grant a temporary injunction with a follow-up hearing, or they'll just deny it, or they will neither deny it or grant it, but grant a hearing to hear more, because there's enough there, but there's not enough to grant it ex parte, because that's like the biggest thing that a judge can do is grant something ex parte, because you're granting it just on one person's word. So it's a very difficult decision. Obviously, if you have a situation, my son was hospitalized because his dad beat him up.
What do you think judges would err on the side of caution in this day and age of domestic violence and weapons being legal and all that sort of stuff?
I do see them erring on the side of caution in most situations. Because the last thing a judge wants to do is have a
murder,
deny an injunction, and the lady is killed the next day, or the man is killed the next day, because there's just as many injunctions going that way.
Sure, yeah, fair enough.
So, but you have to balance that against a person's due process rights. So, you can't just say, because they could be lying. A lot of people use the injunction. A lot of people use the injunction process improperly. They use it to get a leg up in the divorce. Okay, so let's say I'm going to get divorced, and I fill out an injunction saying my wife beat me up. She hit me. Not you, Janine. She hit me.
The other
she
wife.
Beat me,
just kidding.
She pulled a knife on me. She did this in front of the kids. Everything. Okay, so I put all that in. It's all BS. But I get the house and I get my kids for 2 weeks at least before that person even has a chance to go back and argue their side. She could have been in another state at the time I said that, but I still, for 2 weeks, I was able to get her out of the house so she has nowhere to live, or she has to go out of state to live with her parents, or has to live on friends' couches, things like that. So you have to balance the judges. It's a very
it's hard. It's a hard decision.
Important decision, and it's a very hard decision. But, I think judges will probably look at things to see if there's a divorce pending, things like that at the same time. A lot of people do injunctions to just try to change child custody, where they already have an agreement where it's 50-50, but they file an injunction to get the dad or the mom away from the kids, and now I get them full time. So then when you go back to that hearing, that's when you can bring witnesses and you can testify and you can tell your side of the story. But that's about 2 weeks later. Sometimes people get locked out of their houses and their home office is in the house. They can't get to their computer. They can't get to their work.
But can't they file a motion right away with the judge to get their stuff?
You won't get that hearing. It's too.
But can't you
hard.
just? Couldn't you get escorted by an officer to grab your stuff?
They usually
mandatory.
They usually let you when they come to your house to serve you with the initial injunction, and said you have to leave your house. They'll usually only let you gather personal, like toiletries, some clothes, some basic stuff. You can't take a TV. You can't take all this stuff.
Toilet
you can't
paper.
take your.
Can't take paper towels.
Well, if you're working from home with a laptop.
But then if the injunction gets entered on a permanent basis, or for 6 months or a year, then at that point, within 24 hours or 48 hours, you get a police officer and go back and get some more stuff, like your work stuff or something like that. But hey, you may have lost your job in those 2 weeks. So it's a very
dicey,
convoluted system. And people do need these injunctions when they're really in fear, when they're really the subject of domestic abuse, or their kids are in danger. But sometimes they don't. Not everybody is honest. Not everybody is as forthcoming. When someone says, let's file an injunction, I say, tell me why you need an injunction. And I will advise them right there and then, hey, that's not enough for an injunction. That's not what this court is for. Used to be a judge from Polk County that would fill in after he retired, named Oliver Green. And his famous thing was, this doesn't belong in this courtroom. This belongs in divorce court. Go over there and deal with this. You're just using
Good for him.
So, I think our judges do a pretty good job on sorting out the ones. And what they do a lot of times, if they're not sure, like I said, is they'll set a follow-up hearing, but they won't enter an interim injunction. So they'll say, hey, there's enough here to at least explore further. But there's not enough here to say, get out of your house and you can't see your kids. So
Florida is a no-fault divorce state. So what does this mean to someone looking to get a divorce?
It's not my fault.
It means that, for the easy one, infidelity, doing anything that the other person doesn't like, in this situation, it's no fault. It means you could be the worst person in the world. You're still going to get a divorce. It may affect the custody situation, but it usually doesn't affect the equitable distribution situation unless you can prove dissipation of assets. If you're having an extramarital affair and you're taking $10,000 a month to go on trips out of the country with your mistress or mistress, which would be the male version. I don't think that's a real word, but
you're Mr.
Then the woman or the man on the other side could say, hey, I need more of his 401k because he wasted $100,000 of our marital money. And it doesn't matter that the man earned it or the woman earned it. It doesn't matter who earns it. In Florida, anything incurred or accrued during the marriage is marital. A lot of people will say, well, the car's in my name. I said,
is there a timeline on that, like of marriage?
Well,
or is that the minute you get married?
The minute you get married, unless there's a prenup, now there is separate property, there's inherited property. Like let's say you inherit property from your mother, you can, if you don't put your spouse's name on that deed, or you don't put your spouse's name, or you don't commingle it, you get an inheritance of $1 million. You take that $1 million and you put it into a joint account, it's now marital. But if you set up your own account and you keep it separate,
Then it's hands off.
then it's your money. So a lot of people don't realize that you get married and you owned a house prior to the marriage. You might run into this sometimes. You own a house prior to the marriage. Well, that may be your house prior to the marriage, but if you put him on the deed, now it's half his. So you may have $1 million equity in that house. I had a case one time. The guy had $1 million.
We've seen times where they don't even have to put them on the deed.
Well, and that's something a little different because what that is there's also a equity claim. So you own a house that's worth $400,000 and you have a $200,000 mortgage. During your marriage, you paid off that $200,000 mortgage. He's got an interest in $100,000. The claim would be because you used marital money to pay down that mortgage.
Yeah.
So he would have a claim against the equity under equitable distribution, even though the deed never went into his name. I had a guy one time, $1 million, married a younger woman. He had $1 million house, married a younger woman, and after a year, she got him to put his name on the deed. And
her name
divorced him. Her name on the deed. Divorced him 3 months later, and she got half the house. We negotiated it a little better, but that's what he was at risk for.
I saw that. I've seen that before. There was a lady that you could tell she just totally like set this guy up, and she was on the deed, and they didn't have an attorney, and. He's like, she can't make me give her half. I go, yes, she can. She's on the deed.
So in that situation, also, what I would advise my clients, hey, I'm thinking about putting in her house. I said, then you need to write up something that says, like almost a contract that we're doing, and witness that you're doing this for estate planning purposes only, and it is not your intent to give her any interest in the home unless you die. So there.
That's a good spin.
A lot of people don't know that, but at least that's evidence that the intent was not to give her half the house. The intent was, if I die, I want her to get the house, but if we divorce, I don't, I don't. So that's some things we've done in the past, but it's something that I always advise my clients on. If they have a lot of assets and they're getting married.
We've seen crazy stuff too, where people have got divorced and then moved back in, and then now they've broken the chain of title, and then that person dies. It can get really dicey.
Yeah, because then you get tied up in probate.
Yep.
And then homestead laws, because the kids, if you have minor children, the homestead laws and all that kind of stuff. It can get really complicated. But property, real property gets tied in with the divorces a lot. Whether it's a homestead, a lot of people have rental homes. And then the rental homes are upside down because the rent doesn't cover the mortgage. So you're using money from marital funds to pay down the mortgage. So it can get very complicated with issues. There's some divorces that are straightforward. We call them uncontested. The parties basically agree upon everything. They just want to come in and want a lawyer to write up the agreement. And in that situation, whoever comes to me or contacts me first, they're my client. And I have to advise the other side that, hey, I'll write these up pursuant to your agreement. You need to take them and have them reviewed by someone if you want to, but I'm not your lawyer. We make it very clear.
As a divorce attorney, both of them cannot be your client. Is that right or no?
If you're doing it right, that is correct.
It's not like real estate. You can't represent both sides.
Yeah, it would be. I don't do it at all. I mean, I guess you can get waivers and try to protect yourself.
Probably not a good idea.
It's just a straight practice that you have a conflict. You can't represent the interests of both parties. Can my husband come in and talk to you? No. He needs to go talk to his own attorney, I can talk to someone on the other side if they're not represented, but I can't give them legal advice, and we always make that very clear in any communication. We represent your wife. Here's the deal she's proposing. I cannot give you any advice on this. I advise you, if you wish, to bring it to an attorney and have it reviewed, and that's up to them to do it or not.
So some of our listeners in quarantine may have a question, and if you do, now is the time to text it, 813-377-2775. Again, that's our off-air number, so you can call or text 813-377-2775. If you got a question for Glenn, he'll answer it here in the last segment. 813-377-2775. When we come back, we're going to talk about why it's really important to hire an attorney for a divorce. And is Florida a 50-50 state for divorce? Back in a moment.
Have you wanted to speak
Well, good morning. Welcome back. Final segment, hour one, here on Tampa Home Talk. We've talked about a lot of Tampa Home Talk, but we've not talked about homes for Tampa that are available for sale talk.
We will. Let's hold those for next hour with Kim. I think that makes sense. But we've got some pretty good ones hanging out. And I think we did get a question. Mimi's going to bring that in a few minutes.
Okay.
So what's some of the biggest reasons why somebody needs an attorney for divorce? Like, what's important about that versus just, I can do the paperwork?
First of all, when you go to the courthouse and you get the paperwork, people are overwhelmed. They give you a packet, and people can't see me, but it's probably 12 foot deep.
It's a phone book?
It's ridiculous because you got all your forms.
Or 2 phone books now?
You got financial affidavits, and if you have kids, you have UCCJEA where you have to fill out under oath where the kids have lived for 5 years.
People fill that stuff out wrong, I would imagine, too, right?
You got to do parenting classes. You got to have a parenting class done. It's just, if you're able to have an attorney just for the peace of mind, people don't want to do this themselves. And then even when you get an agreement, you really, really want to make sure it's written up properly, because you might have an agreement and you might have saved $3,000, or $4,000 or whatever, $2,000 to have it written up by an attorney. And then 3 years down the road, you realize that nobody mentioned his 401k. Or we left this out. They didn't know they were entitled to his 401k. They didn't know that the guy who split his 401k with his wife didn't know that the 10 years he had a 401k prior to marriage is his money. He didn't have to split it because it was premarital. It's separate property.
So they literally count the time you're with the spouse, whether it's a year or 20 or whatever.
Date of marriage to 2 different dates. Date of separation can be used, or date of filing, or date of final judgment. Usually you see date of separation is the day we use because that's the day you ceased kind of supporting each other. Now, granted, there's people that still pay all the bills during separation. One side may pay all the bills, and that's probably in lieu of alimony. He can say, I don't owe you alimony, or retro child support for the 15 months we were separated because I paid the bills, I paid the kids' schools, I paid the kids' clothes, I paid everything. So they'd get credit for that. But a lot of times if they don't do that, now they owe $50,000 for past money.
So the answer is no, right? Florida's not necessarily 50-50.
Well, Florida is a premise of 50-50 equitable distribution without outside factors, such as premarital components. But your 50-50 is only from your date of marriage to whatever date you pick, that is used for the date of finalization. You might have, if it's a second marriage, you might have had 20 years worth of other stuff that you don't have to share. Of course, the prenuptials can get rid of a lot of that. I've done some prenuptials with a lot of sports athletes lately, but from both sides, the marrying wife and the athlete, where you get very particular. Like, if you're married this long, this is how much alimony you're entitled to. If you're married this long, this is how much.
It's kind of crazy. They're thinking about that pre-marriage, I think, but maybe not.
It can be, but for the most part, there's two. The equitable distribution is basically 50-50. You're seeing a big move in Florida courts with child, it's not called custody, it's called time sharing. You're seeing most judges start with the premise that it's 50-50. Show me why it shouldn't be. Versus back in the day, tender years doctrine with the moms, babies under 2 or 3, the mom should have the baby the child all the time, and dad shouldn't. But there's stay-at-home dads too, so that's changed in that section. You're seeing a much more 50-50.
My husband had one that came with a package. He's 26 now, but he was 8 months old when I met my husband.
So it's basically your child.
Yeah, really, I raised him like my own, and I consider him my son. But I tell you, it was very different back then than it is now.
Oh, it is.
Very different. I know at one point we paid more in child support than we did our mortgage payment.
Yep.
If that tells you anything.
And child support in Florida is a guideline. Child support is you take the man's income, you take the woman's income, you give credit for who pays daycare and who pays health insurance, and it spits out a number based on the number of overnights you have with your child.
It wasn't like that before.
No. So it spits out a number based on number of overnights. So here's a very interesting situation. You could have your child from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. every night, and if dad or mom picks that child up at 10 p.m., he gets credit for the whole day because he had the overnight. It's all based on overnights.
Wow.
So you can have your child 14 days in a row and never have them overnight, and dad gets credit for every overnight. So, and the reason that's important is because the child support guidelines that the government puts down, the legislation puts down, is based on number of overnights. So if it's equal, it's like 182 and a half each. Now, a lot of people say a lot of people come in thinking, dad says, well, I have them 50-50. I don't owe any child support. Well, no, you're wrong. If you make $200,000 and she makes $50,000, you're still going to owe quite a bit of child support. So Florida gives you a break for anybody that has your child over 20% of the time. Florida has like a de-escalation that will lower child support because the logic behind that is, hey, I have the child 40% of the time, so I'm paying 40% of his expenses during
Right.
the time I have him. I shouldn't have to pay you 100% of child support.
Right.
So I think that's a good scale. There still needs some tweaking, in my opinion.
I wish they had like a separate trust account and both parties paid into that and all the expenses came out of that.
I've done that with athletes that make a lot of money. Because once you make too much money, the child support, you're not going to pay $40,000 a month in child support because Tom Brady's making $20 million.
Right.
But what I've done with athletes in the past is I've set up trust accounts where I say, okay, this is what goes to mom every month to take care of the basic expenses.
Well, then things are going for the child,
Right. And then you set up a trust account for college. $2,000 goes to mom, $10,000 goes to child. Right. Child's set up. But if you just give $10,000 to the mom for child support, you don't have to prove what you spend it on. She can go out and have a drug habit and spend it on drugs.
And I think
she can
that's
go out and buy
it's a challenge for the other party,
Gucci
right?
bags and everything. That's the problem with that. With the rich divorces.
Let me answer the question that we got texted. They want to know, what are the qualifications for alimony? That's kind of a loaded, loose question.
There's a lot of different kinds of alimony. We have first thing most people look at is length of marriage. Basically, in Florida, 17 to 20 years is a gray area for permanent.